Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and if you love this podcast, will you please click that subscribe button? It really helps me out. I am so thrilled today to have Dr. Sheila K. Collins with me today. And she is the author of the recently released The Art of Grieving. Art and art making help us grieve and live our best lives, which I truly believe. A grief advocate and international speaker, Dr. Collins brings both personal experience and professional expertise to her work. She has endured the loss of her son to AIDS and a daughter to breast cancer. Losses she chronicled in her award-winning memoir, Warrior Mother, Fierce Love, Unbearable Loss, and the Rituals That Heal. With a 40-year career as a therapist, professor, and social worker, and a background as a professional dancer, Dr. Collins has helped thousands transform life's toughest challenges into post-traumatic growth. And I love post-traumatic growth discussion, so we'll talk about that. Her TEDx talk, When Death Threatens Someone We Love, offers a poignant perspective for those supporting loved ones through terminal illness. She's also the author of Still Point, a self-care playbook for caregivers, now a popular online course for family and professional caregivers. She currently directs the Wing and A Prayer Pittsburgh Players, an interplay-based performance troupe that helps individuals and organizations tell their stories in transforming ways. So much in that bio, so much there. And as I was reading the part on the caregiving, that's another huge one. You know, I remember when I was looking after Blaine for that 10 months, how there was just really not a lot of support there. You know, it's just, yeah. So I'm excited to dive in and get to know you a little better and let the listeners find out more about your wisdom. So tell us just, that was your bio. Tell us a little bit more how you got into using art for grieving.
Well, I wish I could tell you that I sort of knew about that but I didn't. I mean, I just, how I really, okay, so what really happened is as I went through so much grief and I felt like I had some stories to tell that I wanted people to know because they were things that I didn't know. When even though I was a professor and I was a teacher and there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about. So I really felt like there was something to be done with this information. So that was my Warrior Mother book. And then when the Warrior Mother book came out, there were some people that were delighted by it, but I recognized how afraid people are of the topic. It's like, and so now that's where my second book is. But what I kept saying to myself is, well, what is it that I did that was helpful to me? And it was really the arts and people in this system that I teach, which is called interplay. So we tell our stories to one another in certain ways, and sometimes we sing or dance or and so then I realized, well, that's doing something to my brain, and all of our brains, and also the notion of being in community, that you
Right.
do things in community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know in my book, I talk a lot about releasing emotion through all kinds of different ways. But I know that for myself, expressing it through writing, and I did some painting and I did some work with music while I was going through that as well. And I know that it transformed a lot of that emotion into something beautiful, really.
Yes, yes. Well, and this may seem a little strange, but there's another book I just want you to know and your people to know about because it came out about a month before mine. It's called Your Brain on Art. And
Mm.
it's from Johns Hopkins University, and it is It is the scientific evidence for what you and I are talking about, what you and I know, which is when you're painting, when you're dancing, when you're writing, your brain is changing
Yeah. Yeah.
and processing.
Absolutely.
We're processing. And that's what grief is. Grief is just processing what's happening to us. And another thing that I came up with is that people don't always know that they actually are grieving. You
Yeah.
know, that it's already going on. I mean, you don't have to say, oh, well, now I have to grieve. I mean, it's happening sometimes without our awareness. And
Yes.
so then, one of the things I figured out through my own experience and being a dancer, being so in touch with my body. So like I would have situations where, I mean, why am I so tired? Why
Mm.
am I so tired? And I went to an acupuncturist uh, right after my daughter died, and I had been with her. And I said to I said, oh, I mean, I know I should eat, but I'm too tired to hold my fork. I mean, it was that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And he said, grief takes your chi. Grief takes your chi. So that made sense. And so sometimes I say to people when there's a lot of tiredness, what what's going on? Maybe there's something you're processing. And
Mhm.
so, you may not have thought about anything, but and also big things that are happening in the world that we don't even want to think about, but we're needing to process them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we were just talking about that just a little bit before. And really the elections for a lot of people are a grieving process
Mm,
because you're either grieving, what was and fearfully looking into the future of what might be. You have no idea, or you're grieving the loss of the candidate that maybe you voted for or what you hoped for to come out of that. Like you're the first one I've talked to that has talked about grief as a process. And that's the way I talk about it. And so
mhm.
I think that's so cool that we have that similar perspective on it all. And it does take energy. It's so much.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing that I think, because I really have concerns that people, um, it's helpful to know that that's what's going on. Maybe you can't
Yes.
change what's going on, but to know you don't feel crazy. And so another thing that I want people to know is about anniversaries. The
Mhm.
anniversary of something is and we're in the States right now. It's the anniversary of the first 100 days. So
Right.
that's the kind of reflection back at what have we been through. And like you said, some people it's been horrible, some people it's been great. I mean, mostly it's been too much. I
Yeah.
would, if I can just give that opinion.
Yeah.
It's been too much stuff, and our lives are like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Even the notion of grief sometimes. If you have a loss and then you can hardly take a breath, you have another loss. I mean,
Yes.
this is a lot to process. It's and we do know that the present loss may go back to one earlier.
Yes.
Now it brings it forward.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's part of it. To know, but to know that,
Yes.
is really important. I said to somebody, in the new season, when a new season happens, and spring is really, we're in spring. So in spring, the smells are different. And dogs know, I mean, you take your dog out and they're just noticing
Yeah.
immediately, right? So, and I was thinking that grief is like that too. I mean, that what is it that happened last spring, or in terms of the connection with the new life coming and the plants that didn't make it. And I mean, it's all
Yeah.
happening around us all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I always talk about it as this, God-given gift
Mhm.
that has been provided for us to help us move through that because life is like that. You're always letting go of something, there's always something changing. there's
Mhm.
always loss, and it might not be a loss of a person. It can be a loss of a lot of things. And some of them are small, some of them we aren't so attached to, and the next one is huge. And so
Mhm.
we don't recognize grief, like you say,
Mhm.
per
Mhm.
se, unless it's the death of a person. And usually, when it's a major loss that really impacts us, then we are forced to look at it and forced, like you say, to look at all the others at the same time. Yeah.
Some others come forward. Yeah, it
Yes.
happens.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. When we haven't processed through them. And there's always things that we're working through. I think all in divine timing, at the perfect timing, these things come up for healing,
Mhm.
and we're all where we need to be. But getting back more into, the way that you are helping people figure out how they can process their grief.
Mhm.
And, you know, what are some of the things that you do to help people?
Well, I mentioned, or it mentioned in my bio that it matters how we tell the story.
Mm.
So, you know, many therapists will tell you that, somebody comes and they tell their story, they da da da, whatever it is, and then they tell it again, da 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 da, and then are they stuck in the story? So that's, you have to ask yourself that, am I stuck in this story? So we, one of the things that we do with in using this tool, interplay tool, is to tell the story slightly differently, just a tad differently. And sometimes you can do that by singing a line of the story, say 100 days, 100 days, I mean, so then something different may come to your mind, because it's all, we know everything, we know our stories, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so that notion of being able to tell a story in a transforming way, and so that it is so you can be transformed, and the arts are such incredible tools. Like I have a section in the book on music, and that was the one that I wasn't as confident about writing about, although I mean I use it, but I didn't think I understood how it works. And so one of the things, one of the experts that I interviewed said, we are vibratory beings.
Yes.
We are. So if we have a gong, and if I gong something, and you and I are in the same room, our bodies are gonna move. We're gonna vibrate to that sound. Well,
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense to me then, And so and I think people sometimes kind of know this, but not so consciously. If you want to change the way you feel about something, um, you can have a different playlist. Right? You
Mhm.
can have a different play. You can go into something as a playlist. If you really want to remember someone, and maybe your favorite song with that person, and visit that time in your life, that can be a very, what I call, sweet sorrow, that
Mhm.
you stay connected to that time in your life and that person or that situation. Or you can say, okay, I'm just gonna let go of that right now, and have another kind of experience. So you might be in your car, singing out loud or something along with it. So that notion, what I'm so convinced about now, Angela, is that these tools, these art tools, they're really medicine. I mean, and we can self-administer this medicine, right? I mean,
Yes.
and so this is, and that's the reason I wanted to share with you the um, Susan Maximin and Ivy Ross's book, Your Brain on Art, because scientifically now we really see the research they did. If somebody is drawing, they can see what lights up in the brain. If somebody's singing, they can see what lights up in the brain. And so we can really see that we are changing the way we're processing.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. And many times particular songs have come to me. Maybe sitting, maybe shopping, and all of a sudden a song comes on in the background and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of takes me aback. And then I'll go home and I'll listen to it and I'll look up the lyrics and it'll be, wow, and I start to relate to the person who is singing it. And sometimes I even feel like I'm channeling the person. And I feel like I've got like a confidant or somebody that's really saying what I'm feeling. And sometimes I'll play that song over and over and over. And each time I hear it, it just speaks to me. And I think, how lucky are we to have these artists that share this music with the world, or, we share our own music with the world. How important is that? Because I know it's walked me through a lot of tough times.
Absolutely. One of the stories in my book, The Art of Grieving, was, of course, we were shut down. So
Mm,
this is the time to look at loss because there's like so many you can't count. You know,
right.
so I had been doing a lot of I've been writing a lot, but I said it's time to get my book together. It's time to. So I'm trying to get this together, and this song keeps going over and over in my mind, and the song was from. Like you, I looked it up. I said, "What? How do I know all these words?" And what, I knew the words. It's coming from me. And so
Yeah.
I looked it up, and it was a song that I would have been about 3 years old when that song came out, and it was for the end of the Second World War. We did it before, so we can do it again. We did it before, so and that's like this cheerleading thing.
Mm,
And here we are, we had another 100 years before we had a pandemic.
right.
And here we are now. And the message is, we did it before. So I mean, it was like magic, really. It was just like magic. And I thought, well, so I've come up with this notion that there's a part of us that's smarter than we are.
Mm,
In terms of not, our conscious mind is trying to figure stuff out all the time. And that's great. But there's another part of us, the intuitive part of us, the imaginative part of us, the artistic part of us, really, is way ahead of us. It's way ahead of us. And that has been, so that's part of what I do in working with people. I first of all try to convince them that there is a part that's smarter than they are. And then I give them exploring ways to get in touch with it,
mhm.
to and to pay attention to what it is that happens. So like one of the things that we do sometimes in our class is, so we what happens is we be partners with someone, and we had a theme for the day, whatever that was. So we've been talking about it or whatever, so we were all on the same page with the theme. And then it would be my turn, and I would just let my body move, just let it move, and then I would wait and see what I notice. And what I tell people is, you may get a memory, you may get a song, you may get a poem, you may get an image. I don't know. But whatever's going to happen, you're going to be surprised by it. And it is so magical. And that's the deal. I mean, and then the other person does that. And this is of course, with a witness. I think that makes a difference too. To have another person who's just with you, accompanying you, witnessing you, letting it be. Whatever it is, let's let it be and celebrate it.
Yeah. Yeah, accompanying you. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking along the journey with you wherever that might take you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so important because I feel like one of the biggest healers in grief is being acknowledged in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that not feeling alone, that notion there, because let's face it, this is the one thing that we all share. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody's getting out of here, without, a loss here. And we all have many losses. And yours may be different than mine, but we know that feeling of or all those feelings that you can have.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so amazing. So with the art, I also noticed, and this is from my educational background as
Mhm.
well, when I saw kids playing with clay or painting or and just getting immersed in that, and they absolutely loved it. Like there was not one of them that didn't love to play with all of the stuff. I
Mhm.
just saw the other day, our group, retired teachers, went
Mhm.
to Medalta, which is a clay. It's they used to make clay pots there. There's a lot of history there. We went for a tour, and then they did a clay project with us. And I looked around the room, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I see that same light in everybody." Even though we're like, "Oh well, we don't really know what we're doing." We're totally loving it, right? Like loving every minute. And everybody come out of there smiling with a little project of some sort that we had put together. And it was so fun.
Absolutely, it is. And I think it does have something to do, Angela, with when there is a loss, to be able to create something that's never been before. And of course, we're all like, especially older people, we're not artistic, and we can't sing, and we can't dance, we can't draw. I mean, we're all that kind of stuff in this part of our brain. But the reality is the description you gave, which is if you get yourself in there and just play with it, there's that child part of yourself that's going to come forward and be just, delighted by what you the experience even.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you worked with soul collage? Do you know of soul collage?
Well, I've heard, I know about collage, and I have several people that I'm connected to that do quite a bit of collage. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I think then there's this, the creation of the collage, but then there's this questioning that comes afterwards that kind of gets you into that, what does this mean for me? Or just, what
Mhm.
feelings came up when I was doing this that helps you explore that. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, it is the reflection on the experience.
Yeah.
That's part of it. So you don't just have experience, 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 and and never let it settle and let it teach you something.
Right.
So that's, yeah, that, and we call this, what do you notice now? What is the noticing, and particularly what is the noticing in your body? So because these feelings are in our bodies, we're excited, we're scared, we're, whatever it is, whatever you name it, we are having, if we're having an experience, there's feelings connected to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I want to go back to when you were talking about the story and telling the story and sometimes getting stuck in the story and not
Mhm.
being able to transform through that. How can we help people change the story?
Mhm. Well, I think that that notion of switching or adding something else. We have another form that we do that of exploring, which is, okay, we have a topic. So the topic might be anniversaries, and then we just start talking, and the directions are that you are to leave spaces in your telling. You're telling something. So leave spaces, and you stay in your own story. But if you notice anything from the other person, because they also are telling their story in the same space and time, you can grab that and put it in your story. So,
Mm.
it like the example would be if I'm talking with you and there's a siren that goes by, I can put that in the story, you know,
Right.
because it's here. So that, anyway, it sounds like a crazy, but it's a playful thing. And there's so many discoveries that are made when this happens, for the people doing it and also for the people observing it.
Right.
So like there was I can give you an example, that a grief example. My husband and I, when we were both going through the difficulties with my daughter's medical stuff, and talking to the doctors, and and the merry-go-round of it, now it's better, now it's worse, all that. We did not talk directly with each other a lot about it. I talked to my friends. We did, because it gets, so we did a side-by-side story about, the theme was our daughter's, challenging thing that she was going through at that time, a bone marrow transplant, I think. And so we're each telling the story, and I hear him say something, and he says, we did everything we could. And I pick it up. Yes, we did everything we could. And nothing worked. And I said, and nothing worked.
Mm.
It's not where we were headed with that story, but you could have heard a pin drop. It was like, we got to the place was really the heart of that story. That was that there's nothing more to say that's any more true than where we were at that time. And I know people who are present for that. This is like 15, 20 years ago. They still remember it. They still remember being in that moment with us. So I think there's a deepening. Well, we kind of say it's sneaky deep, it kind of comes up on you. You weren't expecting that.
Right.
But then there's something about something that is true. That satisfaction that we said it out loud.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's almost, scary to think that, you could say that even. And then when you do say it and you realize the world didn't end when you said that, even though it's super painful, it's still turning. And life still carries on. And it's just, I feel for you because I think the same way, because Blaine, it was 10 months of, the cancer treatments and the chemotherapy. And, that's a relatively short time, I guess. But in that time, I just remember feeling so uncomfortable because I didn't know what I could do or what I should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing or, any of it. And when it was over, I was questioning, whether we had done everything, right? And so when that really came full circle, and it was just not recently that it did come full circle, it really hit me like that. Yeah. I mean, we did do everything we knew to do at that time. And I think that's how it got clarified. Yeah.
Yes. That notion of having some grace for ourselves.
Yeah.
That because, we can be so blaming of, well, some people blame the doctors, some people blame themselves.
Yes.
I mean, why didn't we do all that? And we do what we do and do our best. And so then there's that acceptance, which is where we're going. Where we're going with grief in the processing of it is that at some point it becomes that is what had to happen, or that is the real. People say to me sometimes, well, you're just dealing with real. Well, that's right, but we go to a lot of other places before we get to real, or we avoid a lot of real, what is real. And
yeah, because it's hard to accept.
Well, of course. Yeah.
It's very difficult to accept. And that word accept is coming up a lot for me because really through that acceptance is when you can start moving along and starting to take glimpses into your future. But until you accept that, it's really hard. Yeah.
Well, I know one of my, the founder of Interplace, Cynthia Whitten Henry, and she was really kind of a consultant to me, or I don't know, she was a supporter after we heard that my son had been diagnosed with AIDS. And at that time, that was the death sentence. Nobody had any good ideas about what, he was not going to live a long life for sure. That was, and so she said to me, and I can still remember how it felt when she said it. find a way to say yes to this. Find a way to say yes to this. And I thought that sounded like the hardest thing that anybody had ever said to me, but it's what you just said. Until you do. Now, it's not, yes, I love this. Yes, I'm choosing this. Yes, I want this. No, no, no. It's just, yes, this is it. This is what I am being asked to do.
Yeah.
I didn't pick this off a menu. You
No,
know?
no.
No way. No way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I don't know what your beliefs are, but I've done a lot of work and research around soul contracts and things that happen. And
Mhm.
I know that there's a spiritual self and
Mhm.
perhaps a plan that was put in place, but there's also this human part of us that we
Mhm.
have to acknowledge that
Mhm.
didn't pick this, didn't want this, doesn't
Right.
not interested in this.
Right. Right.
And you really have to deal with that. You know, you really have to allow that human to have that experience. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's a big
Mhm.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how can people find out more about you, or maybe find out about your books and your resources?
Sure. Well, I do have a website, which is my name, SheilaKCollins.com. So there's quite a bit on there. I'm writing on Substack, which is an app that for writers, and that was kind of scary to get my. I'd been doing a lot of writing, blogging for years, but when people said you should be on Substack, and I thought, well, those are like the people that went to school to be writers, I'm not one of those, but yeah, so it's been interesting because there's a lot of connection with the different writers and responding to each other. So that's been really wonderful. So anyway, it's Substack, and I think it's Sheila K. Collins. It's at Substack is how you get there. And then let's see what else. Well, the book is The Art of Grieving, How Art and Art Making Help Us Live Our Best Lives. And that's wherever you get your books. Obviously, Amazon is the biggest seller, but Barnes and Noble and all these other people. And people do tell me that actually giving this book to someone when they have a loss has been very, very helpful. One of the things about a book is you don't have to open it. You
Right.
don't have to open it. Not now, anyway. You can wait till you're ready to open that book. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to say that the cover is pretty nice. So one of the things I'm looking at now is doing. I just met somebody who is a marketing person for an arts center in my state of Pennsylvania, and we're looking at maybe doing a retreat because his facility, which is called Touchstone, has all of these art making rooms,
Oh,
So, it's amazing. So there's one for painting, there's one for ceramics, um, there's one for like blacksmithing. I mean, I remember that's an art. I mean, they have all anyway, it's a beautiful place in the Laurel Highlands. And so we're looking at maybe having a retreat where people could go and do some things with the art of grieving and the whole grieving process, but also trying out some different arts and just see where we get with that.
yeah, I love that. That sounds amazing. Yeah, so I encourage people to check that out. Is there any other advice or words that maybe we haven't talked about that you want to share?
Mm, sort of the last.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that did come to me is that a lot of what we do really is art, and we don't give it credit. We don't say it's an art. So, what is it that makes cooking an art? It isn't, it can be. It isn't always. It's sometimes it's, oh, I got to get the dinner on the table. I mean, very functional. No meditation at all. But then there are other times when I know during COVID, I like many people started making bread, and I mean, and it was it was a wonderful thing, And so there is that meditative place that you go to when you do something, or gardening, you know. So a lot of times just switching to something in your regular life that can give you a change in a release, a switch from just that very practical, do this, do that, do this, do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I always encourage people to keep reaching out, keep trying new things, keep trying stuff, because you never know what's going to be
Mhm.
that thing that helps you express it or release it, or that you just start to look forward to. You find something that you start to look forward to, and that's really
Mhm.
helpful too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks again for taking the time today. I know that people are going to really enjoy what you've shared here, and I encourage them to check out your book and maybe get signed up with her on an email list or something, or follow her on social media so you can find out when this retreat is happening.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great, Angela. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for listening, and bye for now.